All right. Good morning, GPAR. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Happy to see so many folks joining us for this morning's coffee talk. Before we get into today's conversation, let's look ahead to the end of the week. And on Friday, we'll be having another edition of Coffee Talk, and we'll be celebrating Women's History Month. And we will have two women leaders from our association joining President Annette Collier. And we're going to have Stephanie Biello. She is the PAR District 1 Vice President for Philadelphia. And then we will also have the PAR Treasurer, who is also from GPAR, and as Heather Patrone-Shook. They're going to be talking about what's going on at the state association level, leadership, and a whole bunch of good stuff. So we hope you'll join us Friday morning, 9 a.m. Keep an eye on your inbox if you haven't registered already for that. But they're two great leaders from our association, past presidents. They both have done two terms with us. So should be a really great and engaging conversation with those folks. So let's get to today. Today, we're so lucky to have with us another GPAR past president, and that's Allan Domb, a four-time past president of GPAR, as well as a former city council member, candidate for mayor, whole bunch of good stuff, giving back to the city that he calls home and where he does his work in. And with that, I'd like to introduce our current president, Annette Collier, who will lead that conversation with us this morning. Good morning, Annette.
Great. Good morning, Matt. Thank you and the staff so much for making this possible. Good morning, GPAR. It gives me great pleasure to welcome, as Matt mentioned, our past president and Councilman Allan Domb, among many other things. He is a real estate and business expert. We're proud to have him as a part of our GPAR family, who continues to advocate for GPAR to be a winner as it applies to the industry and advocacy. So, Allan, welcome to joining us today.
Thank you,
So
Annette.
great. So when it comes to volunteer leadership in GPAR, could you talk to us about that? Like you as a four-time GPAR past president, please share what drove you to get involved with the association.
Well, I guess I got started in 1980. Some of you on this call probably weren't born then, okay? But I actually came across, I looked up for this call, 1982. I became a realtor in 1980, and I got my real estate license then. 82, I was honored by what was then called the Philadelphia Board of Realtors, okay? And there was the $1 Million Luncheon. I don't know if those of you remember Sal Esposito. It was held at the Barclay Mirage Room, second floor. This is 1982. And I had won the award at that time when interest rates were 21%. For those of you who may not remember, I see many people on here who do remember, like my friends Jody and Joanna and others. They remember those rates. But the guest speaker was Larry Kane. Some of the people at that luncheon, I'm going to just take a minute and go back in time, who won awards. Chris Artur, Mary Lou Buffum. You know these names from the past. Louise O'Donnell, Mary Genovese. Ken Mallon, who's now commercial. Marie Perry, Al Perry's mother. Bill Festa, and Bill Loveland. Just going back in time. But what happened was, came out in 1982 and got more involved with the board, became president in 1990. That's when we sued the city, by the way, over the illegal raising of the transfer tax and won about 30 plus million back to the taxpayers. And that was a big deal for GPAR at the time. And continued my association with GPAR. And in 2012, I got a phone call from Al Perry and Kurt Gasper. I think they were the nominating committee at the time, and asked me if I wanted to come back and be president again. And I remember what I said, but I won't say it on this call, okay? But I said, you know what? Real estate and GPAR has been unbelievably good to me, so I will be happy to do that. So I came back and was president in 2013. Was asked to continue in 14 and 15, and I saw that the city was really, in many areas, needing the expertise of financial and business people and real estate people. So I ran for city council. And with the support of GPAR, I can't say that enough, and PAR and NAR, with their support, I was able to win the city council seat, stayed 2 terms, resigned my seat, ran for mayor. Again, GPAR, Matt, and everyone, all of you were so super supportive of me. I can't thank you enough. It changed my life. That would not have happened if I had not been president again in 2013, 14, and 15. So I really credit GPAR for changing the course of my life and giving back to the city. But here's why it's important. NAR, of course, is the voice for real estate. PAR is the voice for Pennsylvania real estate. And I always used to say GPAR is the voice for Philadelphia real estate, but it also needs to be the voice for the future of the city of Philadelphia. Because as the city does well, so does real estate. And we can't operate in a vacuum. So Annette, you said to me about GPAR, what are the important things that I see as a member? Number one, it's the networking opportunities. I wouldn't have met all these people at GPAR if I hadn't been for GPAR. I wouldn't know anybody. I wouldn't know anyone. It advances legislation, and that's so important when you think about all the legislation GPAR's put forward, especially on my term in council. That wholesaling bill came from GPAR with CLS. That was kind of an amazing legislation. I was the fortunate person to carry the ball, but that was all GPAR. And it was the engineering really of the officers of GPAR and Matt Braden to connect with CLS. That was brilliant because it brought along so many council people, a brilliant legislative move. There's also, of course, as you know, Annette, the legal hotline, the education, standard forms. How about that? Imagine if we didn't have any standard forms, we'd be lost. How about RPAC? How important is RPAC? And I'm a big believer in RPAC because I've seen the results and the benefits of RPAC. But I think, look, at the end of the day, I am forever grateful to GPAR for changing my life. I can't imagine if I hadn't become president again in 2013, I would never have gotten involved with government, ever. And it was a tremendous experience.
Wow. Well, what value does the association present to its members? I mean, you kind of went over some of those things, but are there any additional things that you might think of?
I mean, there's so think about it. The forms we use every day, the legal hotline and the ability to network, and the legislation. The GPAR is like a watchdog over the legislation. I know right now we're dealing with the potential, Matt mentioned to me, 9% roughly increase in transfer tax. That's a big number. What's crazy about that, by the way, is here we are looking to borrow $800 million to make homes more affordable, but we're making the cost of entry less affordable. Doesn't make any sense. So that's something we're going to have to deal with down the road. And it's also the education. I'm a big believer in education. GPAR has great courses through PAR and NAR. I love the CRS programs that NAR offers. So there's a lot of great education through GPAR.
Great. You kind of mentioned about the current real estate market and its challenges. You mentioned some of those things. How would you describe the current state of the Philadelphia real estate market?
Well, we'll say it's much better than it was in March and April of 2020. Okay, because at that point it was shut down.
Yeah.
There was nothing going on. So it's recovering. It's a slow recovery. It is recovering. It's healthier than it was yesterday. What I am starting to see is more older baby boomers, I'll say over 50, 55, if that's the category anymore, maybe it's over 55, starting to come back. For 5 years after COVID occurred, they stayed out of the city. They stayed in the burbs, or they went to Florida, the Jersey Shore, and they didn't want to live close together. And people that came in the city, though, were young people aged 21 to 35. They had like 24,000 increase since 2020 of younger people. They were fearless. They wanted to have a good time, enjoy all the restaurants and the activity, and they came into the city. And when you look at the properties that were developed from 2020 to 2025, and where they pulled the tax abatements and built based on the change in the tax abatement, those properties were mostly catering to younger people. Think about it. Small studios, small 1 bedrooms, and small 2 bedrooms. They didn't really build for the upper end of the market. And so now we're starting to see baby boomers come back to the city the last, I'd say, 4 or 5 months. They're kind of bored in the suburbs because the city's way more exciting, and they're coming back in. And we've even seen some people from Florida moving back because they miss their kids and grandkids. And that's good for the market. And we're starting to see, I actually had 3 or 4 people from Los Angeles reach out to us because of where they lived and with the fires and the air, wanted to move back to the Philadelphia area based on that unfortunate situation. So I think the market's doing much better. And look, from our biggest issues were public safety and the quality of life issues, which is part of the public safety, and work from home to a degree. And I can get into that because that's kind of been a major issue for the city. Public safety, major crimes are down almost 35 to 40% under Mayor Parker and Commissioner Bethel. Commissioner Kevin Bethel could be one of the best police commissioners in the country. When I was running for office, I had many conversations with former Commissioner Ramsey, who would always tell me about Commissioner Bethel, how good he is. He is a protege of Ramsey, and Ramsey was phenomenal. You know, someone asked me before, what could Philadelphia learn from other cities? And when I was on council, I researched what other cities were doing, and 2 or 3 cities actually were copying what Philadelphia was doing under Ramsey. They were doing in Dallas. They said, let's take the Philadelphia model of focused deterrence and utilize it in Dallas. So we had some great programs. Unfortunately, during the Kenny administration, some of those were abandoned, but I believe Bethel's bringing back a lot of those programs. He's doing a great job. The major crimes are down. What I see as the biggest issue for the city is the quality of life issues, the homelessness on the street, the mental illness, the addiction. I'll give you an example. Saturday night, 11:30, I get a phone call that they graffitied a building I owned at 15th and Walnut. It's called the Drexel Building. All over the windows, all over the limestone. It's a historical 100-year-old property, all graffitied. The next day at noon, I get a phone call from a little deli I have called Schlesinger's at 1521 Locust, that a homeless man walked by, picked up the outdoor table, and smashed it to pieces into the sidewalk. I actually took the pictures of both, sent them to the mayor, and said, this issue is what's causing people not to want to be in the city, live in the city, and come into the city. And to her credit, she's told me she's working on a program. She's hoped to roll it out soon. She understands the issue. She's contacted different people to see what they could do. So she was responsive. I got to give her credit for that, because I will tell you the past mayor wasn't as responsive, I'll say. Okay, so I think she's doing a pretty good job, Mayor Parker. So those are big issues in that quality of life. That is the biggest issue.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm very sorry that that happened to you. And I know we've kind of talked about, so I'm really hoping that there will be changes in the positive way. How do you see the market adapting to interest rates and inflation?
Well, I've been around a while, so I've seen interest rates go from 2.5% recently, last couple of years, to back in, I remember 1981, 82, they were 21%. So a lot of that depends on the rate of inflation. If inflation is strong, interest rates can absorb and people will buy. Inflation back then was 15%. It was really high. But when inflation is lower, much lower than your interest rates, then that's the real cost of borrowing, and that's where the market shuts down. So right now, having rates between 5.5 to 7.5 is not terrible. I believe what we had before, I call them COVID rates. It was extremely unusual. I don't think we'll see in our lifetimes 2.5, 3.5% interest rates again. And by the way, part of our problem as realtors is that we have owners of properties who have 2.5% mortgages and don't want to move because they don't want to give up that mortgage rate. So we don't have the activity that occurs. Let me mention something else, though, about that I'm very concerned about. I'm concerned about the office market in Philadelphia. And all of us need to be concerned about it because, again, we're the future of the city of Philadelphia. So let me share with you some stats that I've learned from being on that tax commission. We have 43 million square feet of office space, 43.2 million to be exact. We have about 11 million right now vacant, almost a 24% vacancy factor, double what it was in 2019. But on top of that, office rates have dropped 25%, okay? So we have a lack of demand in the city for offices. Last year, commercial office leases signed, 548 leases. Guess how many traded up? Practically zero. 98 to 99% traded down. What I mean by that, we have 10,000 feet, we're taking 6,000. We have 8,000, we're taking 5. We have 7,000, we're taking 4. Less demand for office space. And so a lot of these buildings are underwater, meaning the debt is greater than the value right now. 14 buildings in the city are more than 50% empty. And when you don't have people in offices, you don't have workers in those seats, it hurts the economy, it hurts the commercial economy, it hurts the residential economy, hurts everything. And look at the suburbs. The suburbs are booming. Look at Valley Forge, Conshohocken's like a whole new city. Devon, Malvern. I mean, why is Fidelity Investments in downtown Boston, yet Vanguard is in Valley Forge? And it's really because of our tax structure, which we can talk about. But the office market is severely hurting. And here's another problem. Because of our lack of demand, And of the 548 leases, 98, 99% traded down. There were only 8 leases, 8 out of 548 from companies outside the city. That means everything is musical chairs within the city. That means the city's not attractive for people to either grow or expand or come into the city. When you'll have 8 out of 548 leases, that's a bellwether that we're not attractive. I can tell you that Conshohocken in those suburbs is totally different. And it leads to our tax structure. And I'm concerned about this. This is a big concern because if you're an office building owner, forget the class A, let's say you're in a class B, B plus, A minus. Your rental rate, follow me on the math, is $25 a foot. Was 30, 32, now 25. You do a 7-year lease. The cost to build it out for that tenant is about $75 a foot. And that's cheap, some are 100. Now, follow me. If it's $75 to build it, and you're charging $25 in annual fees, and the operating expenses typically are $15 a foot, that leaves a profit of $10 a foot. If it's a 7-year lease, would you just make $70? But it costs you $75. So what's happening now, because of the lack of demand, many buildings are saying it's cheaper for me to keep my space vacant than to rent it at the demand rates of today. That's a major problem. So on the tax reform commission, I'll jump right into it because I'm hot on this one. Because we got to create demand. I mean, when we create demand and put people in these offices, they're going to buy goods and services, they're going to buy real estate, they're going to be here, but we got to create that demand. And what's happened right now is, as a city, if you're a small business operator and you're in New York, small, medium, or large business, you pay 15.1% of your income profits in taxes, 15.1. In Philadelphia, thanks to Governor Shapiro, it was 14.2. It's now 13.7. The third highest in the United States is California, and they're 8.8, and we're 13.7. Chicago and Boston are 7, and we're 13.7. The suburbs are 5 points below us. Atlanta is 4. Texas and Florida are 0. So when you look at the structure, every small, medium, and large business is saying, I would get a profit as soon as I move out of the city. If you go down City Line Avenue, you figure the tax ratables between the Bala-Cynwyd side and the Philadelphia side. Bala-Cynwyd has 80% more tax revenues than the Philadelphia side of 20%. When you look at the top 20 employers in the city of Philadelphia, only 3 are private sector. By the way, Minneapolis, where it's freezing, has 14 corporate headquarters. We have 3 out of 20 private. You know who they are? Comcast. Thank God they're here. American Airlines, because of the airport. And the third, I hate to say this, is a security guard company. And what does that tell us about our economy? And again, I know we're realtors, but we have to make sure that the economy is strong so people have good paying jobs to buy real estate. So the tax commission came forward with 3 proposals, different levels. When I was in council, I had a bill, and one of the proposals that the commission came forth has pretty much similar to that bill, which is the following. Of that 13.7, 5.8 is what's called the net income of the BIRT tax, business income receipts tax, almost 6%. eConsult did a study that said if we eliminated the BIRT tax over a 10-year period, can't do it right away, it's too much revenue, over a 10-year period, and you took the wage taxes down to about 2.95 over a 15-year period, you would grow 50 to 70,000 good paying jobs. That's what we need to do. What we need to do is change the mindset that it's important to invest in the city to grow our base. We have 2 choices as a city: increase taxes on the people that are here, or attract new people to come to offset the basic load of the cost of operating the city. I'm in favor of expanding the base than to keep taxing people, because what's happened, we lost since 1950s over 600,000 people, and we lost mostly the middle class and the upper class who said, I'm leaving. I don't know if you realize 46% of the residents of this city commute to a job every day outside of Philadelphia. Think about that. And that percentage is dramatically higher in the Northwest, in West Philly, and Northeast, where it's easy to get over the line. Northwest Philly is probably the highest where they're commuting to jobs in Montgomery County. 46% is the average. I mean, that's a terrible fact for us. I'll stop talking there.
No, that was a lot of good information. I even had to take notes. Thank you so much for your information. You kind of mentioned the public safety, but what steps can the city take to ensure safer neighborhoods for residents and businesses?
Well, the public safety, if you look at the statistics, major crime is down 35 to 40%. What is still a problem is I'm going to say quality of life issues, the homelessness, mental illness, and addiction that's on the street. I will say this, I would go to Kensington once or twice a week while I was in council, drive through. Sometimes I would take the L up to K&A and walk down to the Somerset stop, okay, just to see what's going on and observe. It's much better now than it was, much better, like 10 times better. My concern is that some of that population has probably moved to different sections of the city. And we're starting to see that in areas where that Kensington situation has really gone into other parts of the city. But what can the city do? I know that the mayor's working on facilities for housing people. We need, look, I had asked Mayor Kenny at the time to declare a public health emergency that gives the police and all the other people who are helping the ability to help those who can't help themselves. I go out every night from 10 to 11 o'clock and I walk my dog and I try to help homeless people get into locations. Like there's a great location at 12th and Bainbridge called Ready, Willing, and Able, where you can go there, you can get a bed, room, food, and they train you for a job. I mean, it's amazing. 95% of the people refuse. And most of it is mental illness or addiction. They need help. I said to the mayor and the police commissioner, we can help dogs better than we can help humans. If I see a dog on the street, I can pick up the dog and get them help and get them better right away. I can't do that with people, which something's wrong. We need to have that ability to, right now, the police will tell you, we have no place, we can't have any authority to move people. We move them along, but we can't do anything else. You can 302 them, but at 72 hours, they come out of a facility. We need the ability to help people who can't help themselves. And until we do that, it's going to be a problem because people who have a mental illness don't realize they have a problem.
Yes. Yeah. What lessons can Philadelphia learn from other cities regarding public safety? I know you travel a bit.
What can Philadelphia learn from other cities?
Mm-hmm.
I think I forget which city it is, but it's in Texas where they've done a really good job with the homeless population. But I think we need to create more facilities and places to house people. But again, we need the ability to take those people who are on the street off the street. Right now, we have no ability to do that. You can talk to the police. They don't have the authority. You can go up to someone who has a mental illness who's screaming in your face, and there's not much that can be done other than move them along. And I mean, that's not really the answer. The answer is they need help. And this is not jail. This is giving them real help to get them back on track if possible.
Yes. Being humane.
Yeah.
Man,
I can't repeat this enough. We're more humane when I see a dog laying on the street and I can pick up the dog and take him to a vet and get him fixed than I can. I saw someone at Butcher and Singer, 15th and Walnut. I can't get this impression out of my head. 4 weeks ago, about 10 o'clock at night, laying on the grate, a man who had a colostomy bag attached to him with no shirt on. That guy should not be on the street. He should be in care.
Yeah. All right, you're about to start making me cry, Allan. Because it's just unbelievable, but I saw what you're talking about, and it's very disturbing. I know you talked about taxes in the city budget, but could you tell us about the Tax Reform Commission and your work on it that you're doing?
The Tax Reform Commission is basically made up of 15 people. The controller asked me to serve as her appointee. The mayor has several appointees, so does the council president. The diverse chambers are on the committee. I have to tell you, the committee is really made up of a very smart, diverse group of people who are put in, I must have had 18 to 20 meetings. It's a lot of time. And, my concern is that we put forth 3 proposals. And in the mayor's address, she touched on them slightly, but very slightly. We need oxygen. The office market is a disaster. You don't fix the office market, your whole economy is going to have an issue. Here's why. Every office building is worth less money. Every office building is going to go in and reassess their value. Take the clothespin building. Does everybody know what I'm talking about? The clothespin building at 15th and Market? That building at one time was assessed for $300 million. You could probably buy that building for $25 to $30 a foot. It's about 1.8 million. It's about $50 million. It was 300. 50 million for that whole building, 1.8 million square feet. And the problem is it's not really convertible to residential. So there's some real challenges. Look at the Wanamaker building. There's other buildings like that that are challenged. There are some plans for Wanamaker right now. Hopefully they'll work. But I'm concerned about that because when you look at the population traffic, Chestnut Street and South is at 100% of 19, but Chestnut and North is at about 60, 65%. And the work from home, not coming in Mondays and Fridays, having people not here, having more empty offices. I mean, think about it. You doubled your vacancy factor in 5, 6 years. We have to figure out a way that the city's in demand. And then I can't repeat this enough, but when you do 548 office leases and only 8 are from outside the city, what does that tell you? We're not in demand. We have to have a structure that people want to come here, work here, live here, and stay here, and open a business here and expand here. Most of your businesses, look at them, they moved out of the city to the suburbs.
Wow. Well, I think you kind of touched on the biggest challenges in Philadelphia regarding taxes. I think you hit on that. How do you think Philadelphia's tax policies compare to other major cities? You kind of touched on that too. Did you want to add anything to that?
But I think the chart speaks for itself. I think the fact that we have the second highest business taxes of anywhere in the country, and it's by far the highest. I mean, New York's 15.1, we're 13.7. Third highest is California, 8.8. Anytime we're way higher than California, that's a problem. And Boston and Chicago. Boston's booming. They're at 7. Why should we be double? If you're an entrepreneur, Annette, and you go to your accountant immediately says to you, Annette, move out of the city, you'll save money. Close to 6%. You'll save money immediately. Not only that, your employees will save money on the wage tax. I mean, that's the problem. Look who's left. SmithKline left. Roman Haas left. Radiant Insurance left. Mother's Works left. There's like 50 companies that were here that left. If we had kept them, we'd have those jobs. You know, there's a lot of people who say, I remember in government would say, oh, Comcast, they don't do it. Thank God Comcast is here. It's 11,000 jobs. A technology company like Comcast has something called a job multiplier. For every job they create 5 more jobs. We need 10 more Comcasts. Comcast is really responsible for like 50,000 jobs in the city because of the spinoff of the jobs that come from their high salaries they pay.
All right. Yeah. All right. So we're at what incentives or reforms could encourage more real estate investment in the city? And again, you kind of touched on it. Did you want to add anything?
Well, a couple things I had mentioned in the commission. I'm not sure they made the report, but I felt that every new business that is opening should have one person, an ambassador in city government, that walks them through the process, cuts out the red tape, and makes it easier to work with the city. Right now, one of the biggest challenges is working with the city itself and not knowing where to go and getting things accomplished. If you can cut out the red tape, that's a big, big plus because it's pretty complicated. I remember when we opened with a partner, opened a small restaurant in I'll say northern Fishtown, and I stayed out of the process. I didn't want to be involved. It took the guy 14 months to get the restaurant open. 14 months while they're paying rent. That's the kind of thing that we can make simpler. Like we should redo everything. I told this to Ellen. We should have how you open a restaurant in 45 days, how you open a barbershop in 30 days. We should have time frames attached to everything so people know what to expect and requires the city employees to perform to those levels. And by the way, the best example is the state. Josh Shapiro doing a great job with Ben Kirshner, who's the efficiency guy. They're doing great things. We should copy some of what they're doing.
Very good. So now let's get into the real estate aspect a little bit more. How does Philadelphia's city budget and the proposed increase to the real estate transfer tax impact the industry and first-time home buyers?
How does it impact it? Well, look, the fact that we want to make housing more affordable would not be the message of raising the transfer tax, okay? That's the wrong message. The message lowering the transfer tax sends the right message to create people that want to be here, okay? but raising it sends the wrong message. It's wrong messaging. I would say if I had an opportunity to change that policy, I would say the best thing we can do is to look at how we can buy down mortgage rates for first-time home buyers to make their homes affordable and give them the ability to build wealth. 95% of the wealth in this country is in a person's home. If we can take a mortgage today that's, call it 7%, 6.75%, and buy that rate down to even 5 or 5.25%, costs us a lot less money than giving them $50,000. So you can affect affordability two ways: giving people a grant or lowering the price or changing the cost of financing. It is much cheaper to change the cost of financing.
Very good. What do you think the city should prioritize funding to support a thriving real estate market?
So here's my answer to that. 90% of the bills we pass through council are what I call Band-Aids. Instead of focusing on the cures, a thriving real estate market, I can tell you right now, if we start filling these office spaces up with people, you will have a thriving real estate market. You'll create the demand, not a Band-Aid. Fill those offices up with people, businesses that pay taxes, and people want to live here, and you will have the demand. It goes back to when I was on council, I tried desperately to, again, the cure: teach K through 12 in every school, public school, financial literacy, technology, and entrepreneurship. Because if we had done that 15 years ago, we'd have a different population today. I actually set up a course with the Federal Reserve, Andrew Hill, where I paid for 178 school teachers to, at the end of the year, to take a 4-day course on teaching financial literacy, which they did. So I know they're teaching it, but we should be teaching it mandatory. In other words, long-term investment. But the reality is that politicians aren't elected normally on long-term decisions. So something that be put in place now that will help someone 15 years from now, the general population is not going to really recognize that. So it becomes an issue to get those kind of things done.
Very good. Thank you. So are there budget changes that could make home ownership more accessible? You kind of just spoke a little bit on that as
I'm going to tell you
well.
right now, the best way to make home ownership affordable is through buying down the interest rate. It costs the city the least amount of money, and I'm talking about not a temporary buy down, a permanent buy down. And I'm not that familiar with FHA loans, but I remember several years ago, we'd have to check this out. I'll just throw it out there. I know that FHA used to have assumable loans. They may still have assumable loans, but if you could do a buy down of an FHA and have it assumable, you're dramatically changing the value of that real estate. I'll give you the example on that. 2 homes that are $300,000. One has a 7% mortgage. One you buy down the rate to 5%. Assumable, fixed. You go to sell the property, you think they're worth the same? That 5% loan has a greater value of the home than the 7. Might sell for $350,000. Not only are you helping that person afford it, you're building the built-in wealth with the lower interest rate.
That's important. So the economic outlook, what is your economic forecast for Philadelphia in the next 12 to 24 months? Please give us something positive.
Well, I think in general it's good. I think that people are starting to move back in the city. And I will say this: the best thing we can do in the city is to make sure the city is safe, fix the quality of life issues, and make the city fun. People will live in a city when it's fun. When it's not fun, they're not living here. But I will say that the city has become more and more fun. There's more restaurants, there's more things to do. And older people who moved out of the city now want to come back in because it's more fun than the suburbs. I always say to suburbanites, don't forget, you are a sub of the urb. We're the urb. They're the sub. And the fun happens in the urb. So we have all the arts and culture. We're going to have 2026 is going to be a huge year for us with all the activities. But the city's a lot of fun. I mean, think about it. It's just everywhere you go. I walked the other day at night down Chestnut Street from Broad to 10th. You can't believe between 13th and 11th, the activity, the young people on the street, the number of restaurants and bars that have opened up. It's great to see. And it's great to see young people there. So I think long run, we're good. I just want to fix the issues of this lack of demand for office space right now, because that's a real issue.
Yes, I see. What industries do you see as driving the economy in the city?
Well, when I was on council, I felt the same way as I do now. I feel that we should be helping all industries. And number one, we should focus mostly on existing businesses who have been loyal to us and have been here. And once we focus on them, then we can help attract new businesses. But let's make sure the existing ones we have stay here and grow here. They've been loyal this whole time. So let's, having the ability for them to stay and grow is I think most important.
Okay. And what advice do you have for realtors and investors looking to navigate economic uncertainty?
Well, I think that the most economic uncertainty we saw has passed, and that was COVID. I don't think it gets more, I can't imagine it could be becoming more economic uncertain than having real estate shut down, okay? Not open, you can't even work. That's pretty economically uncertain, okay? So I think the worst is over. Could there be another COVID? Maybe, but we are more equipped now how to deal with it because we learned from that experience. So I think we're on the upturn here. I think the city in general I think he's the best police commissioner in the country right now, Kevin Bethel. That's an amazing. There was one thing the Mayor Parker did is pick Kevin Bethel. Amazing. He is a phenomenal police commissioner. I can't speak highly enough about him. So I think that's a positive. But I also think we need to bring people back to these offices. We need to have these offices filled. We need to make it attractive. It's not attractive right now. Like, think about that example. When you can't lease an office space for 7 years and you have to lose money, that means we don't have enough demand to raise the rates. Our rates are low. You go to Boston or these other cities, their office rates are $50, $60, $70 a foot, and they're in demand. We're not creating the demand because our tax structure is driving people out of the city. Think about it. You had 2.1 million people here in the 1950s. Today, you're about 1.5 million, 550. That's a big drop in population. And who did you lose? You lost the middle class and the upper class who pay taxes. The goal is to how do you keep them.
Right. Thank you so much.
You're my pleasure.
I know that there's probably a million questions in there. Matt, do you have something for us?
Yeah, so one quick question that goes to the whole conversation about 2026 and all the events that are going to be happening. Going to be a lot of energy with the city. How do you take that energy and extend it into 2027 and beyond?
Well,
Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think there's going to be, I think number one, we have to make sure we get under control our quality of life issues. It's the worst thing in the world is we don't want to have a situation that's nationwide coming out of the city. So what I spoke about earlier, the homelessness, the mental illness on the street, the addiction, that all needs to be addressed quickly, get the city in a great order, because we're going to be on a national platform. I find that most people who come to Philadelphia from out of the area love the city. They love it. I went to Park last night for dinner late because I was actually showing properties till about 8 o'clock last night. And I sat down and there was this older couple. I shouldn't say older, but they had to be in their late 80s or early 90s. And so I said, I'm going to go over and talk to these people. So I went over and sat down. They're from New York. He was 91, she was 87. They can't take a plane anymore. So they're on a driving vacation. They drove to Philadelphia for one reason. They wanted to eat in our restaurants in Philadelphia. Then they're going to Richmond and down to the Carolinas and Savannah. But it was amazing to me that they came to Philadelphia specifically to eat in our restaurants. So when people come in these events and they see what we have in the city, I think they'll return. I think you might see some people live here. I know there's a lot of talk about New Yorkers being a big part of the buying market, which I haven't seen totally, but I've seen some of it. But I think there's an opportunity here because when COVID hit, a lot of people moved to Florida, left their kids and grandkids behind. And I think they're feeling it after 5 years. They're not connecting as well. And also, we have some great health institutions here. So I think coming back here is a plus. My concern, by the way, as you saw the news, definitely don't want Jefferson moving out of the city. That would be a blow to the city, 2,000 employees. So we have to really rally around and keep the businesses here.
Also, pulling from the chat, there's a number of line offices up for election this year. Anything that's catching your eye in this upcoming election cycle?
I'll stay out of the DA's race for now, but I will say that I'm a fan of the city controller, Chrissy Brady. I'm a fan of hers because she's not really political. She's just looking to do what's right as the controller, do the analysis, and I think she's doing a really good job.
Okay, cool. Getting into the homelessness issue that you were talking about earlier. In your observations of seeing what other municipalities do and how they handle homelessness, is there anything out there that is perhaps a model or a couple of nuggets that we should be stealing from elsewhere and start implementing them here in Philadelphia? Because it is a difficult and thorny situation from a lot of different perspectives. And as Annette was saying, you want to be thoughtful about it. You want to remember we're dealing with human beings. So a whole lot around that. Anything that you saw out there that we should be replicating here?
I know, Prima Gupta from the Center City District has looked at a program in Texas that she thought was excellent. I forget which town it was from, but she is looking into that. I know that is a possibility, but I think the biggest issue is we don't have a place to help people. Right now, I know the mayor's building, I think it's called Riverview, a facility up in the Northeast. But if you had a person with mental illness right now, and you have to bring them to Norristown Mental Hospital, there's a 9-month wait to get in. So we need the facilities really to house people. That's really, I think, one of the keys. And when I was on council, I had a plan that we should build a complete facility, 1,000 beds basically, down by the airport, and set up not just housing, but set up medical, set up job training, set up clothing, food, everything, a complete facility to bring people back on track. Not cheap to do, but I think the cost of what's going on now is far greater than the cost of building the right facilities.
Your audience in front of you is a set of brand new realtors. What 3 things would you tell those brand new realtors to do?
One I would tell, because that's just me, to learn one street and learn it the best of anybody, become a specialist. But that's my thinking in real estate, specialize. 2, I would tell them to remember that you make a living selling it and you create wealth owning it. And that's a very important lesson. That could be number 1. And 3, in many ways, real estate prepared me for government, because in real estate, it's almost like you're running for office. You want everyone's vote, and you don't want anyone to be upset with you. And you want to try to cater to as many people as possible and work with as many people as possible. And I think at the end of the day, for a younger person, don't think short term, think long term. If someone comes to you and says, I'm only going to be here 2 or 3 years, and they want to buy, unless they're going to keep it afterwards, I would tell them to rent, because the cost of going in and out of the property will eat up any potential profits. So I would say give the right advice, regardless of how much commission you might make. It'll come back to you.
All right, and one last thing. Let's finish on a positive note. What are you really optimistic about for the city of Philadelphia right now?
I'm optimistic, and I like seeing people coming back in the city. I'm starting to see more and more people who are going to come back in the city and enjoy the city. We gained young people, no question. They get it. They're fun. Look at Walnut Street. It's now catering to the younger population, which I think is phenomenal. And by the way, most of the baby boomers want to be young, so they're going to come back in to hang out with the younger people. So I see the city growing in that population. I told the mayor 3 months ago, when we lost 50-something thousand people who were over the age of 50, 55, in many ways, we lost our best customers. They have no kids in schools. They don't call the police or fire. They're earning peak earnings, paying high taxes, spending money in the city. They're great customers, basically, for the city. They're coming back now. I think that's a positive. I think the mayor's doing a good job. She's much more visible than the prior mayor. I got to give her a lot of credit. I think she appointed a great police commissioner. She has a lot of other great appointments. I think Adam Thiel is excellent, the managing director, and many other people. I think Kenyatta Johnson's doing a good job as the council president and getting that. That's not an easy job, hurting 17 people. That is a tough, tough job. So I'm very positive on the city. I would like to see these quality of life issues under control, but that's our last piece, and getting these offices back on track. But overall, city's doing way better than it was doing 5 years ago.
Okay, Annette, any last words from you, Annette?
No, I mean, other than the fact that, I took a lot of notes. I hope you all did too. I'm so happy, Alan, that you were able to be on the call with us today. You are definitely inspirational. You also motivate us. You make us want to be involved. And I just thank you for everything that you've been doing through your career. And most importantly, you giving back because you taking the time out to be with us today. You didn't have to do that. And I know that you love GPAR and we love you back. So I hope that everyone has found this call to be as beneficial as it has been to me. And thank you all for taking the time out to be with us today. And again, happy St. Patty's Day.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Great turnout. Don't forget Friday, 9 o'clock. We're going to have another coffee talk with some great women leaders from our association, and we hope to see you there as well. So take care, everyone. Have an awesome day. Bye.
Thank
Thank you.
you.